In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes strange bedfellows.
I see my friend Tyler McConnell's in the house, regular guest on this program, guest on Maverick News, sometimes co-hosts Strange Bedfellows with me.
Love Tyler. He's a good friend.
Isn't he a good man? Really
Yeah.
love him. And our friend Caleb Maupin popped in a little while ago before he had to go off and do his show tonight. I love seeing this convergence happen. Isn't it cool when we can get all of these friends together and actually be friends despite whatever political differences we may have, because we agree on the big stuff and just because we like each other as people. Yeah, that's more than half the battle right there. And that's why
Totally
I do this
agree.
show. It's all about, once you sit down with somebody and you have a beer together, right? You have a good talk. You can't hate that person. I mean, even if you
Yes,
don't
I
like
can.
Donald.
Yes, I can.
Depends if it was Bolton or Clinton.
Yeah, right. But then Bobby Kennedy had dinner with them all, and apparently had a nice
I hope
time.
he's still capable of hating them.
Me too. They're not your friends, Bobby. You need to wake up. Speaking of Bobby Kennedy,
there's all this guilt by association going on in politics these days. And, it's like, especially here in Canada, if you've been to Davos and the World Economic Forum, it's like, well, that's it. You're disqualified. You can't build. So how is RFK Jr. going to deal with the blowback from just even going to dinner with Mike Pompeo? Now he's been to dinner. Obviously, he's compromised. He's buddies.
and Hillary Clinton and Boris
Did
Johnson.
that just come out? It was.
Yeah.
That's so funny. It's like if you could have handpicked the worst people for him to meet with. Like, has it been a big issue though? This is the first I actually heard about it. Has it? Wow.
So you see right there, it just proves he's compromised. He's just part of the deep state. I'm telling you, that's what's coming. Shouldn't have even talked about it.
You know what? On the one hand, I see what you mean, Rick, but on the one hand, I'm kind of glad about that form of cancel culture because, I think it kind of produces. I'm happy that we have a high standard as a movement for people, because at least in the United States, we have been betrayed so many times by our political leaders. Bernie Sanders, AOC, whoever it is. I would even count Trump among there because he came in, said he was going to be populist, but just did everything the establishment wanted. So now people have a very low tolerance for bullshit, and I'm happy about that. They're very, very skeptical.
Yeah. Up here in Canada, though, what's going on is it's like,
isn't it a beautiful
the conservative
thing?
leader?
I've been waiting all my life for this.
He says,
I left the Democratic Party in 1996.
What's going on here?
Because of the Clintons. I thought that the Clintons and their ilk ruined the Democratic Party, at least for me. So I've been a libertarian for the past 27 years. And, I've been waiting for the rest of my fellow Americans to wake up, to catch up with me. I've been a conspiracy theorist since before most of y'all were born. I've been studying the JFK assassination for 40 years, and I'm well aware that some conspiracies are in fact real. And speaking of conspiracy theories and the Kennedys, and we're having a big Twitter space tomorrow night about censorship. And what it's really about is the lawsuit that Robert F. Kennedy Jr. has filed against Google and YouTube for not only censoring him and his campaign, but is also censoring his supporters who post videos about him. They get their videos removed. They get strikes on their channel. They get their channels taken down. I had a YouTube channel called Lori Spencer, and I had strike 1, strike 2, strike 3, all of them for Bobby Kennedy. I mean, before that, I just put news on my channel. Never got a strike, never got in trouble. But as soon as Bobby entered the race and I joined the campaign and I started covering the campaign, putting out videos about it, boom, strike 1, strike 2, demonetized, and finally just banned altogether. And that's happened to so many others who have either, and some are just interviews, just journalists who interviewed Bobby, had them on their podcasts, like Mike Tyson, the boxer, Theo Vaughn, Kim Iverson. So many have been censored just for talking to the guy. YouTube will just take it down. So, and we also at Maverick News are currently on our second YouTube jail sentence in as many weeks. We got a strike on our channel a couple of weeks ago. It didn't have anything to do with Bobby this time. I think it was Trump. It was our coverage of the indictments, which of course everybody is covering. It's the biggest news story in America, in Canada too. The whole world's talking about it. So as journalists, of course, it was our top story. And then we had 7 days in YouTube jail, and then out of YouTube jail for what, 3 days, Rick, before they struck us again?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow.
I think there maybe is a delay.
Tell you what,
Maybe
I'll try a quick reboot and see if that fixes it.
Okay.
Yeah, weird. I'll be right back.
Okay. That is strange. Oh, see, it's the deep state and the CIA screwing around with our internet because they're spying on us again. That's what it is. Getting ready to censor us even more. So, are you experiencing the similar
They're
issues?
censoring us.
Exactly.
Well, they definitely are with all those warnings and stuff you're getting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who do you get now if you don't have Cornell West?
That's right. Well, we're thinking about where we go from here. The Greens, unfortunately, they've run Cornell West campaign into the ground. I hate to say it, no events, crashed the fundraising. They don't seem to be really doing anything. And we had so many plans with him, so it's a real shame. Unfortunately, I don't see him. I don't see him doing breaking 5%, and I also don't see him with the Greens. And also think there's even a decent chance, a good chance, very good chance that he drops out before because the mainstream media will pile on him, and he has family members who simply don't want him to be a spoiler. And they've said, no, that's going to ruin your legacy. And if you're running independent, I think you got to be 100% set on that. And, you have to be prepared to take that. So, unfortunately, I think it's likely that he'll drop out. And the Greens have made just complete mess of his campaign. Such a shame of what we started. And I would really love to see Bobby Kennedy go independent in the end.
So would I.
But he said a few weeks ago that he wasn't going to. He said it was off the table. I really hope that's not the case.
Do you really think, though, that an independent, like if you don't have the DNC or the RNC machines behind you, do you think you even really stand a chance?
I think that's kind of like asking how fed up do you think people are in this country? And I think fed up people are fed up where they're ready for that, where you could see a mass shift. We also have the internet now, so, political shift can take place much faster. Like in the UK, we've seen this in some other parties. In France, for example, the Socialist Party was basically destroyed by, Macron and Mélenchon and new parties there. In Mexico, AMLO's new party, Morena, basically, also destroyed kind of the major parties, really took down the center-left party. In the UK, the Brexit party at the time, kind of blew within 3 weeks. It was kind of, surpassing the Conservative Party. So you can see these kind of like tectonic political shifts that used to never happen. They're now happening. And so I think that it could absolutely happen, especially if you have a situation where, I don't know, a Cornel West drops out and Kennedy ends up endorsing Biden.
I don't know. I mean, when I look at even the Q movement, they seem to have organization, funding, an online media strategy that's highly effective, maybe even sophisticated would be the word, to a point where it transcends what I'm seeing even with some of these other established political parties. I see that as sort of an arm of a populist movement. So I kind of get what you're saying, but they're still attached to Trump. And so, I think Trump realized that in order to win, it's not enough to be a populist. It's not enough to run as an independent. You need to take over the party. And that's why I think the RNC, I think the Republicans today, they're not the Republicans of before. Now it's the MAGA party. Now it's the Trump party. That's the strategy. And I think that's why RFK Jr. too is like, it's off the table. You're not going to win unless you have the party behind you. But I mean, I don't know.
I think if he went independent, he's more popular among Republicans than Democrats. Very popular among independents. So if he went independent, say after, getting cheated in the Democratic Party, all right, Bernie got cheated 2 times in a row. And now, Bobby Kennedy gets cheated, people really fed up there. Then he could potentially bring people together against the 2 parties. There's been a number of polls that show that there's like a 60% majority that don't want a rematch between Biden and Trump, although the Democrats are doing everything in their power to make Trump more popular with all these indictments. So
is that strange, or is that by design?
It's, it's really interesting. I think that I think they knew it was going to make him more popular. I think that their calculation was that the only way that we can beat him is to either legally disqualify him, drain all his campaign funds, with the defense, the legal defense, or even go so far as to rig the election, possibly through mail-in balloting or something like that, because, that's what we impose. So I think they decided to go down this route of kind of legal assault because they realized that they were going to lose to him, and they had to do something like this because they can't beat him in a fair election.
Right. Just like I don't think they could beat Robert Kennedy in a fair fight. Same thing. And they're draining Kennedy's resources with lawfare of a sort, because Kennedy has to keep suing them every time they violate his rights. And that costs the campaign money. Plus, he's spending most of his money. You know where most of the campaign money is going? Security. Yeah. That's right. Because the Biden administration has denied him Secret Service protection, which ought to be a no-brainer if you've got someone named Kennedy running for president. That should just be an automatic yes. Of course, we'll give you Secret Service protection. And, every other candidate in recent memory, going all the way back to 1980, when his uncle, Senator Edward Kennedy, ran for president. I mean, he had Secret Service protection at least a year before the election. Obama, Trump, Bernie, I think all of them had it a year or more before the election.
Why is it even up to Biden? There should be some threshold. You're polling this high or whatever's happening, you've raised this much, you get it automatically.
Right. And the whole reason that presidential candidates get Secret Service protection is because of his father. In 1968, when his father was assassinated on the campaign trail, President Johnson, like the very next day, introduced it. Well, he just ordered it by executive order said that from now on, presidential candidates get Secret Service protection, period. So the whole reason that's there is because of his dad. Isn't that just strange?
Yeah, incredibly ironic.
Yes. Well, speaking of Kennedy and the intelligence community and narrative control and censorship, hopefully I've got my internet issues fixed here, guys. I got kicked out of StreamYard. I swear to God, they're trying to censor me. But I'm back. Do I sound okay now? Can you hear me? All
Seems
good?
good.
I'm not sure if my internet is stable enough to play a video. So, Rick, I just put a video in the private chat. And I was wondering if you could be so kind as to queue it up on your side. Hopefully your internet's okay after the storm and you can run it better on your side. I'm afraid it may lag if I play it on my side. But it's a really interesting clip, and I wanted to play the whole thing for you because it's actually one of the better things I've seen on Rising recently with your friend, Brianna Joy Gray, and Robbie, the so-called libertarian who's not a libertarian. But anyway, but they're talking about how the CIA is actually behind most of this social media censorship. That is the case that Robert Kennedy is making, and I agree with him. Let's take a listen.
Sat down with Project Veritas founder James O'Keefe to explain how the CIA is controlling what you see on social media.
But even journals like Smithsonian and National Geographic, Nature, the Washington Post, the New York Times appear to be compromised by the CIA. We know from the Twitter files that both the FBI and CIA were operating portals within the Twitter and Facebook that allowed them to manipulate information and to deplatform people and to, silence certain people that they didn't like in the social media. Operation Mockingbird was an operation to compromise American journalists. There were some 400 editors, journalists from all the largest publications. The New York Times had been compromised. The Washington Post was basically.
What do you mean by compromised for people who?
Well, they were functioning. The high-level people at those journals were working for the agency or had signed secrecy agreements with the CIA. And at CBS, ABC, NBC, after '75, when it all came out during the Church Committee hearings, the CIA promised that it would no longer compromise American journalists. It continued the program to compromise journalists all over the world. And today, the CIA is the biggest funder of journalism in the world.
And how about present day?
They fund it through USAID.
Now, despite Kennedy's distrust of the intelligence blob, financial records do indicate he's paid his daughter-in-law, a former CIA officer, tens of thousands of dollars in campaign cash. The Washington Examiner reports that the Kennedy 2024 campaign gave $21,000 to Amaryllis Kennedy, the wife of his son, Bobby Kennedy III. Amaryllis worked for the CIA until 2010, reportedly, quote, thwarting terror groups from obtaining weapons of mass destruction. I don't know much about this part of the Kennedy family lore. Has this come across your radar before, Brianna?
I mean, the fact of him having CIA relatives has come up. Look, of course, it's the case that you can't control who your child falls in love with and marries. Of course, the fact of your child's spouse having ideological commitments that are different than your own doesn't mean that you are lying. Payments going to your daughter-in-law because maybe you helped them buy a house or you gave them a job when they needed money or something like that doesn't necessarily mean that he's like in cahoots with the CIA or that he's being disingenuous when he talks critically about those organizations. But I do think it would be interesting if a reporter were to ask him some questions about how he deals with those ideological and substantive differences with someone as close to his family as she is, especially since he is getting so many questions from liberals about how he feels that his family members simply disagree with it, not have actual professional commitments that are opposed to him, but they just don't agree with his take on vaccines or Ukraine or whatever it is.
Right, and that he has suggested before that he thinks the CIA or another law enforcement or national security intelligence agency or person might have been involved in the deaths in his family that have been the subject of mystery. So obviously, in most of that clip, he's talking about a lot of which we know to be true, the influence by intelligence officials on the media, on social media in recent years. I mean, he was talking somewhat about what's happening in the past. We like this. This is a fact that there were separate portals set up on Facebook for law enforcement to flag stuff they want looked at and taken down. Some of that is actually what we want, or most people want law enforcement to identify like child pornography or non-consensual images or violent images or terrorism being organized. They actually do want law enforcement to flag those things for the platform to take those down. So it's not like all moderation is wrong, or no one is ever like actually suggesting that, because that's not true. It's a lot of like criminal conduct on social media, conduct that is rightfully criminalized, that needs to be dealt with, that law enforcement can lend a hand. But what's been so creepy and it generated so much objection is that it's just didn't stop there. Now it's just it's disagreements, it's speech, it's policy disagreements on COVID, on national security. We've talked a lot about how narratives that Ukraine doesn't want on social media have been flagged. Li Fang has done a lot of reporting on that, have been flagged by law enforcement for social media sites. So yes, I think it's fair to say that they're working in tandem. Now, they're not always working in tandem because social media loves this arrangement, but because they faced so much pressure from the Biden administration, and I'm sure would even if it was a different political party's administration. It's not really the partisan.
I mean, to be honest, the social media aspect of this is just it's just the tip of the iceberg. Yeah, the CIA's involvement in directing the cultural trajectory of the United States of America and engaging in a deep propaganda campaign is well documented and infinitely more pernicious than just, and I'm not saying it's not important, but than just the influence on these new social media apps. I mean, in the wake of the Cold War, there was this concerted effort to infiltrate media organizations, Hollywood, to influence the trajectory of American art. There was this feeling that Soviet art, representational art, showing workers coming together, building a society collectively, was pernicious. And so they boosted Impressionism, both to downplay the kind of political value of representational art coming out of the East, and also to show, well, America is vibrant and innovative, and look at this new stuff that we're coming out with here. Take some Jackson Pollock. They tried to influence. They were so frustrated that communism was so popular among young people who saw it as rooted in workers' rights and the growth of the labor movement coming out of the 1930s and 40s in the United States of America. They didn't understand why people were so attracted to it for its equality directives. So many civil rights leaders and labor leaders were communists. And so they had to engage in a propaganda campaign in the wake of the Cold War to make sure that these things weren't considered to be popular anymore. And of course, we all know about the Red Scare and all of those pogroms that swept through Hollywood and stigmatized people down to I Love Lucy. But it was also, it also had these effects in so much more subtle and pernicious ways. And so everything that he's saying there, like people who want to call him a conspiracy theorist, like this is not the moment, like this is not the late. And if anything, what he's describing there is understating how much of our cultural reality has been designed through state-run propaganda mechanisms. Yeah. And it's funny, so many, even liberal people, just kind of more normal liberal Democrats who object, who know their history as well as anyone else, and object to the kind of Red Scare mentality, the McCarthy hearings, all of that stuff, just totally, wholly embraced that exact same thing with respect to the 2016 election and the purported Russian involvement. What communication did you have with Russian agent? They accusing people who had shared content on social media that they say is Russian origin. And still we hear like this gets thrown. I think Vivek got accused of this. Others get accused of that. That narrative you're saying that's a Russian preferred narrative. Well,
Is it accurate? Is it true? Like, doesn't matter if
Yeah.
Russia prefers it.
Is
If it's
it true?
is the case. Like we see these fact checks that saying Ukraine is going to
That
eventually
doesn't
lose
matter.
the war against Russia is a Russian propaganda campaign. Well, like if it's true,
Yeah,
you can't say that if it's true. And the liberal media has
yeah.
wholly embraced that. Ridiculous. They're red scaring all over again.
I was called out during the Bernie campaign for agreeing that until 60 years ago, America was an explicitly legal apartheid state with two tiers of citizenship, one for white Americans and one for Black Americans. And I was told, well, that's a Russian propaganda line that America is bad for Black people. And I said, well, the best way to fight back against that, since it's true, is to improve the status of all people living in this country and have substantive equality. But people didn't like that answer. They, if Russia says that you're supposed to take a reactionary view and just take the opposite position, even if it means, I guess, validating an apartheid state and my own people's oppression. So yeah, it's really gross. Many of us just watched the Oppenheimer movie and saw the ways that his labor bona fides and advocating for students' rights on campus was used against him, or attempted to be used against him to invalidate his anti-war turn toward the end of his life. And that is something I think that people have to be highly vigilant of. Why is it that there's this interest in framing Russia and China, neither of whom have been meaningfully communist in a really long time, as communist actors? What is it about this ideology that the blob in a bipartisan way seems to find to be so scary? We just had a discussion with Max Blumenthal about BRICS and the rise of alternative global economic systems. And could it be the case that the reason that there has been so much red scare about the idea of communism and kind of workers' rights and a global solidaristic workers' movement across the globe, because the blob, the elites, that the people who have been driving U.S. hegemony since the Cold War know that that's the biggest threat to the system that they've designed. So I'm very glad that RFK Jr. is raising these kinds of issues.
I'm going to pull your mask off. It's Vladimir Putin after all. Blow my plane, please.
Yes, the real communist is Vladimir Putin.
More rising right after this.
Wow. Really thoughtful conversation there. I thought that was an excellent clip. Truly a Strange Bedfellows moment there, because Brianna, former Bernie gal, supports Cornel West on the left. And then you've got Robbie, who's more of a right libertarian. And yet they agree 100% as to what is going on, and that censorship is one of the biggest problems we face right now. But most of all, they dug into the deeper reasons behind it, and pulling back the curtain to show that it's actually the CIA. This is all part of a larger foreign policy picture. And yes, it's a new Cold War. I thought that was just excellent, guys. What did you think of that? Nick, any thoughts?
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic too. This is and this is why it's so refreshing to have a candidate out there who's running, who has, the famous family name, the tragic, history, who is able to put these things on the map. Because a lot, coming from the left, a big criticism I have of the left right now, and this includes people like Cornel West, is that there just isn't enough awareness of the kind of technological dystopia that is being built up around us right now.
Right.
Like things are happening so fast right now. What's happened, with the, the vaccine mandates, the explosion of censorship, the explosion of surveillance, all of these different things. I would also put wokeness into that, because it's so pernicious and effective at dividing people. All of these different tools are kind of exploding, and the need to, whether it's like break up big tech, regulate artificial intelligence, so little conversation about that. And the kind of traditional left is just not aware. It just seems to go right over their head,
or they don't believe it. I can't. How many
or they
times
write
have
it
they
off.
said,
Yeah.
"Oh, you're not being censored. Come on, you drama queen. Stop making noise. Nobody's censoring you. Come on." I hear that from Democrats on the left all the time, when people on the right, they were the first targets. First, they came for the Republicans. First, they came for the MAGA
Alex
people.
Jones.
And first they came for Alex Jones, right?
Yep.
And now they're coming for people on the left, which is what we were trying to tell you all along when the Democrats were cheering, yay, I'm glad they banned Donald Trump from Twitter. Yay, I'm glad they banned Alex Jones. I'm like,
Yeah.
wait for it, buddy, because they're going to come for you. And now they are. And they're coming for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. He's on the left. And, they came for us, Maverick News. I've lost count of how many times we've been banned, been censored, been to YouTube jail. We are now censored on Facebook in Canada because of the stupid C-18 bill and the C-11 bill, which, Facebook took all news off the platform for Canadian citizens. They can no longer access vital news and information on Facebook. They took down all of our Maverick News channels.
Wow.
Our Canadian channels can't broadcast in Canada to Canadians. Just let that sink in. It makes no sense. Now, our main Maverick News channel, where most of our subscribers, most of our audience is, we're in YouTube jail for 2 weeks. If you're watching us tonight on YouTube, folks, you're watching on one of our smaller backup channels or channels within our network. We are building a network of, when somebody gets banned, the others in the network step up and put that signal out there. We're finding ways to drive around these roadblocks. They keep putting roadblocks in our way, and we're just trying to get the message out, get the news out to the people of America and the people of Canada. And then not only did we lose our main YouTube channel today, but I got censored too. My Vimeo channel got banned for, again, it's that foreign policy agenda. So this is coming from the Biden administration and the Biden White House. What they censored me for, you guys are going to love this. Rick remembers about 5 months ago, was it? We did a special report that was like 3 hours long about the Nord Stream pipeline. And we showed people, we made a very strong case that the United States actually bombed the Nord Stream 2 pipelines, Nord Stream 1. And I took it all the way back to the last time that the U.S. CIA blew up a Russian natural gas pipeline. Nick, you might not be old enough to remember 1982. I don't even know if you were born yet, but I remember. Back during the Reagan administration, the CIA blew up a natural gas pipeline called the Trans-Siberian Pipeline. And very much like Nord Stream, it was above ground, not underwater. And it went from Siberia all the way to Germany. And it carried cheap, reliable natural gas from the Soviet Union to Western Europe. And of course, the United States didn't like that much. It was the Cold War. They were trying to destroy the Soviets economically. So they blew up the damn pipeline. And at the time, that was the largest explosion that had ever been recorded on planet Earth. It was seen from space. It was a huge story at the time, and most people have forgotten about it. So I've been talking about it a lot over the past year. As soon as Nord Stream blew up last year, I said, wait a minute, I've seen this movie before. I remember the Trans-Siberian Pipeline. So I put together this 3-hour-long kind of special report about that and put it up on all these different platforms. It's on Rumble. It's still on my YouTube channel, folks, if you want to go look at it. YouTube hasn't censored it yet, but Vimeo just took it down today and banned my whole damn channel. And you're going to love the reason why. Let me read for you the reason that they gave. Dear Lori Spencer, your account has been removed by the Vimeo staff for violating our guidelines. Reason: we do not permit accounts that upload conspiracy-related content that number one, suggests that a real-world tragedy did not occur, or 2, violates other content restrictions. So basically, it's whatever the hell we say it is. Unbelievable. So it's a conspiracy theory, I guess, that the United States blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. It's been almost a year, folks, since that happened. It was September 26th, 2022, that Nord Stream went boom. And yet, to this day, the intelligence community doesn't have any answers. They said they'd look into it. The United Nations tried to look into it. Russia put forward a resolution several times to the Security Council asking for a real investigation. Security Council voted it down every single time. Nobody seems curious as to what actually happened to the Nord Stream pipeline. And for some weird reason, after 5 months of that video being up on the platform at Vimeo, all of a sudden they decided it had to go. And it's obviously Russian propaganda, right? I mean, it's obviously commie propaganda. What the hell, guys? What the hell is going on? And so with all this, you've got all this censorship ramping up because we're getting into the 2024 election season. Let's be real clear about this. And I'm going to say this before they turn my mic off forever. Biden did it. Biden blew up the Nord Stream pipeline. Biden is behind all of the censorship. He is censoring his opponents. He's censoring Kennedy. He is censoring Trump. Might even censor him to the point of putting him behind bars. Then he'll be like Julian Assange and he can't communicate with the outside world at all, right? He won't be tweeting if he's in prison. He won't be giving interviews, and he certainly won't be holding any rallies. I'm just saying, folks, they'll go that far. I really, really believe that they will, because I truly believe we are living in a full-on fascist country. There, I said it. I said the F word. The F word everyone's afraid to say. Fascism, that's what it is. It's the merger of state and corporate power. And what we see is this mega conglomeration, Google and YouTube, just as one example of many, that Bobby Kennedy is currently suing in this lawsuit over censorship. And that they're obviously in bed with the government, with the Biden administration. And we found out from the Twitter files, right? And from Missouri versus Biden in the discovery process, we got all kinds of documents that showed collusion between the White House and Facebook to take down accounts they didn't like, videos they didn't like. So, of course, it's going on with YouTube also. And that's why Kennedy is really suing them. This lawsuit is not just about Robert Kennedy. It's about getting discovery documents, about getting those YouTube files that will show us the communication between the White House and that platform. And of course, Zuckerberg and Jack Dorsey and the CEO of Google, they're going to say when the time comes, mea culpa, we were under pressure. The White House was threatening us. We didn't mean to do it, but they made us do it. They put a gun to our heads and made us censor people. No, you guys shared the ideology. You hated Donald Trump. You couldn't wait to censor Alex Jones and Scott Ritter and Rick Walker and all of us and Robert Kennedy.
And Garland
Nixon.
Nixon.
You didn't do it because they had a gun to your head. You did it because you wanted to. Let's be real clear about that. Sorry, I just had to rant. I'm so pissed off about this.
That's a good warm up for tomorrow night.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's what I was getting
that's
to.
a preview right there.
Yeah, I'm going to be really fired up tomorrow night on Twitter because there is no censorship, at least so far so good for me on Twitter. Twitter's been very kind to me. Every other platform has censored me. I've been censored off of Facebook before. I've been lost a YouTube channel, just lost my Vimeo channel. And just about every other platform has taken me down except Twitter. Fingers crossed that they will continue to let me speak. I love Twitter Spaces. It's a great way for people around the world to get on a big phone call for free. Doesn't cost you anything. You can call from anywhere in the world and join us. Unfortunately, Twitter does still censor some people. And they've still got Alex Jones censored. They've still got Scott Ritter gets banned every couple of months. And they've just again banned our friend Garland Nixon, who's a radio broadcaster and all around good man. So we're going to try and find a way to get the ghost of Garland Nixon to join us on Twitter Spaces tomorrow night. This Twitter Space, folks, and I hope you'll join us. You don't have to have a Twitter account to listen. If you're not on Twitter, you can still listen if you just go to my Twitter account, which is Real Lori Spencer. I'll be the host, and we've got an all-star panel lined up. My co-host will be Anita Stewart, who's a staffer with the RFK campaign. We're going to talk about the lawsuit. We're going to talk about how this censorship is affecting the campaign. And then we're going to talk to journalists, not just in the United States, but around the world, who are also affected by this crazy YouTube censorship. We're going to talk to Rick Walker of Maverick News, who's a multi-time veteran of YouTube jail, currently in YouTube jail. We're going to talk to Caleb Maupin, who reports for RT, the most censored network in the world. And YouTube was the first to censor RT. We're going to have a panel of journalists who know firsthand, including our friend Craig Pasta Jardula, who has also been censored heavily by YouTube. Everybody, all these journalists that are doing good work are the ones being censored. You know you're doing it right, folks, when they censor you. So kudos to these journalists who are getting censored. You're doing it right. Good job. And we want to have a real discussion about that. And Twitter seems like the place to do it because we can't seem to talk about this stuff anywhere else. So Nick Brana will be on the panel with us tomorrow night. And Rick will be there. It's at 8 o'clock Eastern Time, 8 to 10 p.m. roughly. And join us, folks, on Twitter Spaces. We're going to continue this conversation in an environment where we can speak more freely. And I look forward to having you guys there. We're just about to wrap up. Nick, where can people follow you and support you?
Can come find us at peoplesparty.org, and we're on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, all across social media.
For now.
For now, that's right. I think they're a little more scared to kick us off, and they should be, because we're a registered political party in the United States. That would be the first time they kicked off a registered political party, to my knowledge.
Ooh,
and so that would take the censorship to another level. You're going to purge a whole political party. Talk about freedom of speech violation there.
Yeah, I'd say they wouldn't dare, but they probably would.
Yeah, I think that they have a plan to kick us all off eventually, and I think that it works through stages, and I'm sure that it will eventually arrive there.
We're going really fast, aren't we, Rick?
We are indeed. We're seeing political leaders thrown in jail. It's happened in my country. They want to do it to Trump. They've already done it to many of the people around him.
And don't forget Julian Assange.
Yeah,
he was the first to go down for all of us.
So, it definitely happens in stages. The frog is boiling.
And boy, they're turning up the heat. Really turning up the heat.
Mm-hmm. They've done it for the past couple elections. After the 2016 election, it was Russiagate, fake news. Remember, all the rage was fake news. Okay, now we got to shut down everything. And then they started reversing the algorithms. The algorithms on YouTube and everything, I mean, now it's like hard to imagine. But it used to actually lead people towards anti-establishment content because that's what people wanted to see. And then they reversed the flow. Now the algorithm leads to the mainstream media and, corporate content, government content. And then in 2020, there was another big wave of censorship, following that, where they kicked the US president, obviously, off social media, showed everybody, where it's going. If we can kick a U.S. president off, we're gonna go all the way. So, I think it's a plan. It works in stages. It's multi-year. It lurches forward every time there's a U.S. election, and it really concerns me because this kind of like window of opportunity that we have with the internet, it might be in retrospect temporary. It might be fleeting. The advantages of the internet that it's given working people for us to be able to have these kinds of conversations, reach people across our countries and the world. There's nothing guaranteed about that.
Well, I was told that the First Amendment was guaranteed, that it was absolute. Am I crazy to think that? I mean, I took the document literally. Congress shall make no law.
Right.
But of course, this is the slimy way that they do it. They say, well, it isn't Congress doing it. It's not the government doing it. It's a private company, Google and YouTube, and they can censor whoever they want. But I argue, yes, it bloody well is. That's what we've talked about for the past 30 minutes. And they are doing it in Canada. The government of Canada passed 2 censorship laws that have now gone into effect, C11 and C18. Are you familiar with those, Nick? You know what they're all about? Maybe Rick can explain. He's the expert.
C11 basically forces the social media companies to give priority in the search engine results to mainstream media, and it pushes the independent stuff way into the background, if you can even find it. And then C18 is an internet version of a broadcasting initiative that has been in place for a long time. It would force social media companies to pay additional fees to the mainstream legacy media for the use of their news content. Pay them for their stuff, right? And Facebook has said, no, we're not going to pay, because as much as they're controlled by government, they also control government. And
that's the irony of it.
Yeah, and
so that one won't pass.
Yeah, because they're more interested in profits. So they said, well, forget it. We're just not going to carry any news content then. So that's inadvertently led to massive censorship, where they've taken all news content offline. They've blocked all Facebook pages that have anything to do with news. If you share anything with news in Canada, you can't see it. So no news on Facebook at all, period, zip.
Is no news good news?
No,
Thou
no
shalt
news
only
is
discuss trivial bullshit.
That's why we ran. Well, I was running a YouTube, Facebook protest online, where I've got an aquarium with a Siamese fighting fish. We call him Fred the Freedom Fish. And I ran that for hours and hours and hours for 2 nights. And my position was, this is the only kind of content that is safe for YouTube or Facebook. Please go subscribe to our Rumble channel. And that's what I ran straight up.
And we picked it up. All the other channels in our network, we would stream Fred the Freedom Fish for hours and hours on end. Because what are they going to do? Ban a fish?
Yeah, they did.
They will. They did.
They did. They banned Fred.
They banned freaking Fred.
Fish.
So you all are ahead in Canada on the
most banned fish in the world.
Yeah, that's unbelievable. As bad as it is in the United States, there's how it's going to get worse.
Yeah, because Canada doesn't have a First Amendment.
That's what I was going to say. I don't think that first law would be legal in the U.S. or to mandate that search engines push certain content down. I mean, the censorship that they're doing isn't legal, but still, like, I think that would be difficult for them to pass in a law.
Right. See, they're doing it, but they could never get Congress to pass a law because the Supreme Court would strike that down.
But they also don't need to, because we know that in practice, the CIA is telling them, derank this, and they're doing it. And the CIA doesn't even need to tell them, because they want to derank the content anyways. So like, there's been studies done about how effective the algorithmic manipulation of search engines is and how it can affect elections. Massive, massive impact,
And what's the number one search engine that everyone uses?
Exactly. Google.
Yeah.
So that's why Bobby has to sue them too.
And the problem
know?
is these companies dominate, right? So it, yeah, you can go out and create another social media platform, and some of them are gaining some traction. So you have
Mhm.
Truth, and you have, well, look what they did to Parler, right? It was becoming too popular, so they nixed that. And what do we have? MeWe, which is barely there, but social media platforms can fail too. Look what happened to MySpace. And I think that in the end, my position on this is that through these efforts to ensure the dominance of these social media platforms like Facebook, YouTube, they are going to make themselves and are already making themselves irrelevant. And so
That's
people
right.
will eventually end up leaving because of the government efforts in collusion with these big corporate entities to assert their constant dominance and hold over power and influence, and they're going to squeeze so hard it'll slip right through their fingers.
It's not going to
Everybody's
work. It's not
everybody's
gonna
going to go
work.
to Rumble.
Mhm.
Yeah, they are. We already are.
We have a larger audience now watching on Rumble almost every night than on YouTube,
Yeah,
which is
Great.
awesome. That's really, really
Great.
awesome. And
I didn't think that we'd ever get there, and it came very quickly.
it did. It did.
Good.
People are starting to understand. They're starting to wake up that we have to protest with our feet. We have to leave these censorship platforms. And, unfortunately, most people still use YouTube. It's convenient. It's a habit. Old habits are hard to break. But I'm glad to see the migration happening over to Rumble and other platforms that don't censor us. And, Rick just brought up MySpace. I got all misty-eyed. I miss MySpace. Tom was my first social media friend. And, I miss Tom. You know why? Because MySpace never censored anybody. You could post literally anything on MySpace. We got to bring back MySpace. If there was ever a time for MySpace to make a big comeback, this would be it.
Those
Tom,
were
are
the
you out there
days.
listening?
Well,
The
the other
Wild
weird
West
thing is
of the
people always
internet.
talk about China, being a censorious nation, and yet TikTok is. It seems to me there's more freedom on TikTok than there is on these other platforms too.
But maybe not, because our friends over at Mint Press News just got banned by
Well,
TikTok this
that's
week.
not to say that there isn't censorship there too. There certainly is.
Mm.
But yeah, I see some really weird stuff over on TikTok, bizarre stuff.
Well, see, that's just it, Rick. It's like you were saying earlier on Maverick News tonight that YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, and Twitter too, they allow extremist content.
Yep.
They encourage it in the algorithm.
Yep.
They push that up in the algorithm, and then they push the real news down in the algorithm. They censor us, but they're more than happy to let a bunch of extremists that want to overthrow the Canadian government have accounts on TikTok with hundreds of thousands of followers.
That's right.
So, and you figure that one out.
I'm working on it. If I'm able to, I'll let you know. But if you guys, somebody's got to help me with it, because I'm at a bit of a loss.
Yeah, it all gets to you after a while. Every time you get censored, as a journalist, it hurts you, because we are committed to the First Amendment. It's the whole reason we wanted to become journalists in the first place. We believe in a free press. That's why we do what we do. So every time they slap us with another restriction, another stint in jail, another channel down, we just have to find the wherewithal within ourselves to get up again, stop crying about it, find a new way to get around the roadblock. They're just going to keep throwing roadblocks in our way, and we have to drive like Steve McQueen, drive like Bandit in the Trans Am, in the big truck, eastbound and down, loaded up and
I think you're
trucking.
mixing your movies together, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I'll forgive you.
I am. I think I'm getting loopy. It's kind of late, so I'll bring this show to a close, guys. But what a great conversation this was. This has been one of my favorite episodes of Bedfellows, and thank you so much for joining us, Nick. We probed all sorts of stuff tonight, and it was fantastic. I look forward to continuing this conversation with both of you tomorrow night on Twitter Spaces. I hope you guys will join us 8 p.m. Eastern on Twitter, on the tweeters. And you can find me at Real Lori Spencer. Once again, thank you, Rick Walker, for being my co-host and my friend this evening. And thanks to all of you for watching. We'll see you back here next Saturday night for Strange Bedfellows. Peace.
In a universe full of ideas, we draw lightness from the dark to a place where opposites attract. Right meets left, positive touches negative, sparking an explosion of truth. Because politics makes Strange Bedfellows.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.